He's frozen again, huh?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
So, first time all three of us on a podcast. All three of us are podcast hosts. So we'll figure out how this operates and runs.
I don't know if I am. I wouldn't say that, but yeah.
Well,
I'm going to act like a guest today. So
I like
this is on you, Robbie.
I like it. I'll take it. I'll take the mantle of responsibility for the three of us.
All on you.
We are obviously people that are passionate about our vocation. Some of us are now, it's careers, it's what we do as a living. But hunting is something we love. Hunting is something we defend. Hunting is something that, people get worked up about. And more often than not, it comes down to words. It comes down to rhetoric. And we all live in the space where we watch our words, we watch our rhetoric, we watch our narrative. We think about what we say. James, maybe not so much. But us, we think about what we say. Right, James?
I think about it. I'm a words guy, like my degree was in literature and writing.
What?
Yeah.
You didn't know that? Oh, yeah.
Damn, I'm learning something. That's amazing.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's the beginning for me. So I am very careful about which words I use when I have the mental capacity to show that care. I don't always get it right. Usually don't. But I am picking words on purpose most of the time.
I think that is, you nailed it on the head from a purpose perspective. What is the purpose of our words? What is the purpose of why we use what we use? And I obviously think about it a lot. I live in that sort of space between a general public, non-hunter, anti-hunter hunting space. Charles, you do the same. What do you think about it, Charles? Do you think a lot about words constantly?
Lately, I think that's all I think about. Yeah, because I feel like our biggest impact. I don't really like talking to hunters anymore. I would much rather talk to non-hunters because I think that's where the biggest impact is. So because of that, not fully, not just because of that, but because of that, I really pick out my words and not to in any way make them weaker. It's to be more definitive, and that is because I believe the non-hunting public, some anti-hunters, but the non-hunting public really has no idea what we do, and they've been given words and definitions by the media, by anti-hunters. And I feel like we can redefine them and should redefine them with better words because it's more representative of what it is we actually do.
Can I throw out a troublesome word right off the bat? Something that's just bugged me for a while. You're going to
derail us like within 3 minutes. You're going to derail this podcast. Go ahead.
I waited a long time. I feel like 3 minutes is pretty good. How about conservation?
Sure.
Dude, what a bummer of a word. Everybody is trying to use the same word in such different and polarizing ways that it now doesn't mean anything at all. That if we go by the definition, it's the prevention of a wasteful use of a resource, right? And I really like that because it is the definition, and within that we have to acknowledge that we're talking about a resource, something to be utilized.
Correct.
I think that's very important.
Correct.
And we're also talking about waste. So we're acknowledging that this resource is available for utilization, but it also requires it. And through that requirement, we need to be diligent in the efficiency and the purpose of how it's being used. And not everybody wants to look at something that we're talking about within the realm of conservation and say, this is something to be used, right? That's not necessarily a warm and fuzzy feeling to look at a population of animals and think of them as a resource. But if we do think about them in those terms, then that's how we can manage that resource and actually make sure that it's there in perpetuity or increasing in value or increasing in abundance if that's what's required. If if there's too much of it, then we need to decrease that, right? Because a surplus is a problem as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I fall back on conservation. But even within just talking about this, we come up with another really problematic word, especially whenever we're dealing with predators for some reason. We fall back on the euphemism of manage. And like that is just like the quick draw word whenever we're talking about predators. Like, we need to manage these predators. Well, we got to manage everything.
You don't
but
think
that's not actually what you mean when you say manage.
You don't think ungulate herds are talked about in the management context?
They are, but we tend not to use that word when we're talking about hunting. If somebody says we need to manage these predators, what they usually mean is there's too many of them and we need to reduce that population through legal hunting and trapping, etc. But if we have too many elk, we don't say these elk need to be managed. We say we need to hunt more elk, right? It's just kind of interesting. But conservation is a word that I almost feel like we need to abandon as a community who believe in conservation. But if people who are more leaning towards preservation want to hold on to that word and use it wrong, I say let them do it, and we need to find our own language around that.
What do you think, Charles, is the difference? What do you think people's confusion is between conservation and preservation?
Well, this depends on, and James was hitting on a little bit, it depends on who you're talking about. There are plenty of what I would consider anti-hunting organizations that are now calling themselves conservationists. And you see it in the news headlines all the time. A conservation org states this, and I'm like, oh, who is that? And I'll go to look, and it's, Defenders of Wildlife or something. And I look at them, I'm like, they're a
and you think that's
org?
contrary to the waste, the definition that James just put forward, which is the smart use, wise use of a resource. A conservationist in that context, the anti-use, animal anti-hunting organization would not be in favor of the utilization component of the conservation definition.
No, I don't think that they are in favor of that. I don't at all. I mean, simple, point blank. I can't find where they are actually in support of hunting, right? And I believe hunting is a conservation tool. If you want to be really definitive, people say hunting is conservation, and some people pick on that. I get what's trying to be said. Hunting is a conservation tool. There's other aspects to conservation outside of hunting, sure, but a tool in that space is hunting, and that's important, I think, to realize and understand that. And it can get nitpicked, but I think it's important we hold on to that word. I think words have been taken from us. I see this all the time. Words get co-opted and redefined. Coexistence is a word I think hunters should use, because the anti-hunters, when they use coexistent, they're not actually defining coexistence the way I understand it. They're defining cohabitation, which is not based in reality. It really has a sort of Disney-esque feeling about it.
I can live in the same yard as a grizzly bear can live, as a cohabitating
That's
pair.
That's cohabitation. Coexisting is that grizzly bear needs to have a healthy fear of me, needs to have a healthy fear of humans, for the betterment of all of us, for the good of the grizzly bear, for the good of the humans, and less conflict. Coexistence isn't mountain lions walking down my sidewalks, which they do here. I'm 15 minutes away from San Francisco. I don't think that's coexistence. Or sorry, that idea, that's like this cohabitation. Coexistence is that mountain lion that looks at me walking down the sidewalk like, oh, a human. I don't think that's good for us. It's not. It's going to cause conflict, and it has, and it does. And different species, mountain lions can live a little closer to humans. I don't mean to get off track, but I don't think grizzly bears do very well on the edges of towns. I don't think wolves do very well on the edges of towns. And and it's not good for them to be brought here. So when people say, "Oh, we need to coexist with them," all the coyotes that we have in Golden Gate Park right now, and I think there was a toddler that was pulled away from a coyote in the last year or something like that. Anti-hunting orgs are celebrating this is coexistence. Look at all the coyotes in Golden Gate Park. I'm like, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it is at all. You know, it's just, it's not wild to me. Animals begin to lose their wildness. I don't view a mountain lion in my town walking around looking at humans and giving no F's at all as a truly wild animal.
James, you mentioned conservation not being the ideal term. What would be the ideal term for what we do?
I don't know that there is one. I don't know that there's a word that can blanket it, because if we're talking about what we do as hunters, we're a primary funding mechanism. We are a primary management tool when it comes to reducing specific populations. Beyond that, hunters are there to understand animals and understand ecology just by having a lot of time and presence in those areas. But that knowledge isn't acceptable to anyone outside of the hunting group, right? Biologists don't accept that. Politicians don't accept that. It's not certifiable. It's not peer reviewed. It's anecdotal, and you get your 2 minutes, and then they move on. So I don't have a good word to replace it.
I think I have one.
Okay, what you got?
And I think it's a co-opted term as well. And the only place in the world that I know that they've actually wrestled the term back is New Zealand. Where you're going, James.
All right.
It's rewilding.
Ooh, there's a stigma. There's a stigma with rewilding.
100%, because it's been co-opted, just like coexistence. And the coexistence is not quite the stigma that rewilding is, but the rewilding stigma is a coexistence stigma, right? It's this putting them back with us. Where in New Zealand has said, no, rewilding is making the place, to Charles's point earlier, as wild as possible. Bringing the wild back to wildlife. And what does rewilding need? It needs stewards, it needs management, it needs use, it needs utility, it needs value. That's rewilding.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I first started hearing about rewilding at the same time that that quinoa was invented, which was about 2012. If you heard of quinoa before 2012, you're not actually being honest with yourself. But that's about when I started to see that happening, and the folks that were using it, they weren't necessarily people that I could connect with very well, and they would for sure be people who are today opposed to hunting as a conservation or as a management tool. But no, it is an interesting term, and it should probably get a little bit more consideration. The one that we're here to really talk about, though, and I am so excited to talk about this, is kill versus harvest, boys.
Well, everybody's been waiting, because the title of this podcast is probably going to be Harvest versus Kill. And it's going to get everybody's hackles raised.
Not kill versus harvest. It's going to be harvest versus kill.
Oh, I could do kill versus
I like
harvest.
kill
I'll
versus
change
harvest.
the title. Okay, we'll just change the title right now. So there it is, done.
Yeah.
Kill versus harvest, and it stems from the beginning of this conversation. Words matter, reasons matter. So it all started. This podcast started because Charles and the team at HOWL put out a post, a multi-carousel post, of using the term harvest and the context in which it is used. James commented, we commented. It's like, hey, why don't we get on a podcast and talk about this? Because that's the best medium to have really good long-form discussions. And we all agreed. And so here we are. So how about I do this? How about I let Charles, you set the tone because you posted about it. And then James, I want you to respond and we'll go from there.
You better cock your hammer, Charles.
Yeah. I should just look at the Instagram post and read that. But
Do it.
the carousel wasn't a large part of it was about words, and I think the day before I had created a different carousel about why words matter. Because you see words like slaughter and murder and all the terms that are thrown on hunters in the debate. But I also like to think about hunters ourselves and how we use certain words. And I think it's important that we recognize our audience, or who our audience. I guess everybody has a different audience, but for me, I'm recognizing we have a bigger audience than hunters, because I actually want to go somewhere. I want to have an impact. 4% of the population isn't really going to do much. So I like I said in the beginning, I like to be definitive. So specific on kill versus harvest. Let me start off with this. James, if you and I are ever hunting together and I come out of the woods, I'm never going to say, hey, James, I harvested an elk. Okay? I'm never going to say that to you, because I'm going to say I killed an elk, or I shot an elk, or I got an elk, or some other thing, because you understand what happened, right? So I don't have to explain my words to you or to you, Robbie, because you guys are hunters and you get it. However, if I am going to make a post about something talking about in the hunting arena, and if I realize that my audience is going to be non-hunters or people who are curious about it, I'm not going to just stick with kill. I'm going to want to define exactly what happened. I want to define what, you can come up with other words for it, but I like harvest. And I think there's a reason why every state that I can think of has a harvest report. Like when you kill an animal, take an animal, you have a harvest report that you fill out. There's harvest statistics and all that. The reason why is I believe the anti-hunters kind of take our words out of context, and then they, these guys are just out there killing something, and that's it. And they're only out there for the trophy, for the head, and because they're psychopaths, and blah, 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 all down the line. In management, which is a great system, it has its issues, but it's a great system that we have in the United States here, and it's a management system. And when I go out and hunt, I'm not thinking about how I'm managing, like, oh, I have to go out there and manage. I'm going out there because I love to hunt, and I love to eat wild game. I don't necessarily eat everything that I kill, right? That I think there's a purpose. That management has a purpose, and harvest has a purpose. But when explaining this, what does harvest mean under the system, the North American model? It means, yes, I'm going out and I'm stalking that animal, killing that animal, and then I'm going to that animal and I'm breaking it down, and I'm packing out that meat, and I'm bringing it back, and I'm eating that meat and sharing it with my family, whatever, friends, all the good things. I'm not just out there killing. So that's sort of, going against the trophy hunting narrative. Mind you, a lot of states have rules, have laws against wanton waste, but I don't know too many hunters. There's a few, I'm sure, but I don't know too many hunters who go out and just kill something and leave it and are just committing wanton waste. When it comes to bear and wolves and all that, do I want to kill a wolf because I just want to go kill one? Is that the only reason? Just because I have this bloodlust? No, I don't think so. I think and I'm not going to eat a wolf, but there's purpose to it. James, your podcast with Justin Russell, right? That's his name?
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic reasons. That's why I want people to listen to this. There's purpose to me going out and hunting a wolf. Am I going to eat that wolf? Absolutely not. But there's a lot of ways to shake this out. You could look at it as, well, the state, the biologists, they claim wolves are having this impact on elk. Well, if I go out and take out a wolf, I might have a better hunt later for elk that I do like to eat. Now that's a personal reason, right? That's kind of selfish. Like, I'm doing it, for the elk. And a lot of hunters, they like to say that. Kill a wolf, oh, you just saved X amount of elk or deer or mountain lions. Oh, I killed a mountain lion. You just killed 52, or you just saved 52 deer that year. Because people say they, that lions, they kill a deer a week. You hear that a lot. But isn't there, and then beyond our selfish reasons or whatever reasons we're going out to hunt, isn't there also a management reason to this whole system? Isn't there also a quote unquote kind of balance between predator and prey? And do we not have a responsibility as humans in this modern day where we have 350, 400 million people in North America, or just in the United States, let alone the world, 8 billion people? Don't we have a responsibility to steward those animals and that wildlife? And I think if we can define those things better, we have it becomes more reasonable. If we can get away. Yeah.
So, Charles, you're saying you use the word harvest for two reasons. First reason, get away from rhetoric that may be used against us, thinking that killing is that rhetoric. And two, harvest has a specific management context to the management of populations within a specific state, specific species, and there is a management definition underlying harvest, like you said, harvest reports by the game agency, those kinds of things. That's why you use harvest.
That's why I use harvest in the depending on who I'm talking about. Yeah, and it's no big deal. Like, I don't know why it's such a big. Like, I see these debates and people kind of lose their minds over the kill and harvest thing. Like, I don't know why, but
James,
I choose harvest because.
Do you agree?
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's a euphemism to say harvest, and in doing so, we're also falling victim to the idea of charismatic megafauna, which is a tremendous issue throughout wildlife management, right? So the porcupine, for example, is all but extinct in the mountain lion-rich areas of eastern Oregon. Mountain lions are the biggest predator of porcupines. We used to have a lot of them. Now we have almost none. But it's not a charismatic animal, so nobody even really noticed that it was gone. We wouldn't necessarily say that we harvested a limit of ducks. We wouldn't necessarily say that we went out and harvested fish. It really depends on the species. And the more charismatic the species is that we're talking about, the more we might feel inclined to lean on a euphemism like harvest, so that it's more palatable for somebody who is going to be coming after us for this thing that we just did, right? I don't know if it makes it more palatable to somebody who opposes hunting to say harvest versus kill. I truly don't know that. Maybe it does. And then when we talk about other words like slaughter, that means something completely different from me, coming from a background where butchery is an art form. If somebody says, I butchered that, what they're trying to say is that they made a mess of it. If you watch an actual butcher at their trade, they are surgeons.
Yeah.
They are masters of efficiency and precision. And the same thing with the slaughter portion of that process. So I think it's an opportunity to also talk about it. And, when do we say harvest versus kill? Right now, even for us here talking, is really going to depend on the species that we're talking about.
So interestingly, I love the idea of the euphemism, right? The euphemism is this replacement of a word with another word to make it less harsh. Okay. So now I want to couch it to both of you in the context of these species. I think James nails it on the head. We use these different terms for different species, but I actually think it might be the opposite. You would think a mega charismatic species, you would want to use the euphemism of harvest over killing. Agree or disagree?
I want to use the best word all the time, but let's just go with it.
If you're going in that context, like you were applying a term to make it less harsh, you would apply that less harsh of a term to a species that is as charismatic like a wolf.
Like a wolf, like an elephant.
Okay. In a wolf, an elephant's different. An elephant, I think, to me is different. But let's just stick with wolves. I don't think I've ever heard somebody say harvest a wolf. I've always heard people say kill a wolf. Mm-hmm. Nobody's ever done the euphemism for a predator, wherein that's exactly the context it should be used for if we were adopting the approach that a more charismatic species requires a word that is less harsh. But we don't.
Well, I think within harvest, there's also a connotation of utilization for food. Harvest is a farming term. It's a farming term. Like we harvest carrots, we harvest wheat. So as hunters started finding a requirement to apply that to what they were doing because they were taking heat from people, then they're like, well, no, this is a food resource gathering type of thing, so I'm going to use the word harvest. Trappers are another one. Like they're very, very afraid of getting trapping taken away for good reason. People are trying all the time to end trapping, and they use dispatch as a euphemism, right? They're the most conscious of everybody about using the most watered down term that they can. Has that helped them? I'd say not at all.
It's a good point. I think the harvest is obviously the thing that it's tied to the most is what you just talked about is crops. Combine going through the field, harvesting crops. I'd actually never thought that the crop analogy could apply to the word harvest. So I'm going to interject myself quickly because I'm supposedly the host of this podcast, but also have an opinion. So I'm going to put out my opinion. I've never thought about the connotation of harvest. To me, I've used the word interchangeably because if you strip down what I do, I'm in the marketing field. Marketing the narrative perception around hunting to people that don't understand hunting. And marketing 101 is you dial your rhetoric, you dial your narrative, you alter your words to fit your audience. And so if my audience understands harvest better than killing, and I don't have a survey, to your point, James, I don't have a survey of the non-hunters that say yes or no, I'm assuming that, then I'm going to use that term. Because in my belief, and my belief is not grounded in science, it's not grounded in data on a survey, but I believe that that's a better term for them to understand who I am and what I do. However, given Charles's carousel post, and I started thinking more about this harvest, and thinking about crops, and farmers harvest crops. They also harvest nuts, fruit, that kind of stuff. And when you think of a population of elk, so let's look at the population of elk in Oregon. The biologists look at that population as a crop. They look at it and go, how much of the population, how much of the crop can we take off without damaging the crop for future growth?
Yeah.
And so you're harvesting this excess off the population, and that is an appropriate term of art for that action. And I was like, wow, it actually fits very well from a management context of harvesting the excess, taking the excess. You're not killing the excess, you're taking it off, you're harvesting it. And then that excess grows the next year and you harvest it again. So that's how I thought about it since our little exchange on Instagram related to this podcast. James, thoughts, reactions?
I see where you're coming from. I do. And I see the value in using language that's the most palatable for your audience. I just don't want to lose ground. And I really don't want to lose ground at the cost of being disingenuine. And I'm not saying that that's what this is, but it's the road to get there, for sure. You know, at some point, are we sacrificing the language with the correct definition for something that, you know, gets farther and farther away from it until we have to fall under the definition of that new word that we've adopted? That's my fear, is like, you know, don't give up an inch. And when I saw some of the actions from, you know, some groups within the hunting community to really water down this image of what hunting is, and to change the language and change the way we're taking pictures and things like that, I had an abhorrence to that immediately. I didn't want anything to do with that. And I also paid attention as that experiment played out, and I don't think it did us any good. I don't see those efforts yielding a benefit. In fact, I feel like it's worse now than it was before. There's no control for this experiment, though. So, you know, maybe it held on to ground that we would have otherwise lost. I don't know that.
Yeah.
Charles?
A lot of things there. I do want to specifically, when you brought up the crops, Robbie, I got to admit, and I thought that was a given. I thought everybody understood that. Like, I think that's the way I've always thought about it, because of the management system in North America. Like, we have, you know, estimated this much population, hunters can take out this much. It's renewable, it comes back. I've always seen it as a crop, and I figured that's why state game agencies use the word harvest. So I want to point out a few things. And James kind of brought up butcher. When people use butcher, that means they screwed something up. But, you know, a professional butcher, that means something else. But kill, what does kill mean, right? So kill is just an outcome. Something dies. If you kill something or somebody or whatever, it can be legal or illegal. Doesn't define any of that, whether it's legal or illegal. It can be hidden. It can be reported. It can be wasted, and it can be used, right? A harvest, under the system that we operate, it's regulated and it's legal. If it's not legal, it's called poaching. That's not hunting either. It's counted. So we turn in these harvest reports, so it's counted and it's reported. I think almost all states do that. Sometimes it's voluntary, sometimes it's mandatory. It happens under limits. So harvest happens under limits, and it becomes the baseline for the years that follow, right? So how'd they do this year? Was it a dry year, wet year? All those things, all these things come into place. I just think harvest is more definitive. And James, I'm not really ever trying to convince anti-hunters. I'm in love with the general non-hunting public. And I've been living in San Francisco here. I've been just talking to people, and I got this little podcast thing going that I actually haven't really released yet at all. I'm just talking to non-hunters. And I'm asking them questions like, how do you feel about hunting? What's the first thing you think of? And some people have good things to say, some people don't. But I'll try and get the trigger words going, because they're not waking up thinking about hunting, you know? So I have to egg them on a little bit. Like, what about trophy hunting? What about when you hear that? And they'll come up with these reasons. And I do the math. I'm like, well, who told them that? You know? Well, it definitely wasn't us. It definitely wasn't coming from the hunters, because we don't talk to the non-hunting public. We just do our thing. We have almost no impact on the non-hunting public. Who does have impact on the non-hunting public are the anti-hunters. And they spend a lot of money. Like, their audience, they're trying to get more non-hunters and convert them into anti-hunters, right? I wish the hunting community was trying to get more non-hunters and convert them into loving and understanding and supporting hunting. I'm not talking about R3. I'm not talking about becoming hunters. I'm fine with no more hunters. But I feel like the non-hunting public needs to understand the purpose for what hunting is. For what, when we say things like, when I say manage wolves, I put out, blogs or actions or whatever else. I say, we need to manage wolves. Because the instant reply from the anti-hunters is, if we delist wolves, they get exterminated. They're all going to die. We have to keep them on the endangered species list because hunters are going to go out there and kill them all. Nope, that's not the way it works. It's impossible. We want to manage them, and here's what this means. So now let me break it down for you. And I love doing that because the only thing that I have seen so far that the anti-hunters can reply to that is something emotional or calling me names or just saying, no, you're lying. You just want to kill everything in sight. Look at the mount on your wall. You just like killing everything.
James,
well,
do you
define
think...
what killing is to me then. And I'll ask them those questions, and they can't because they know, well, some of them know, some of them don't. Some of it's just ignorance and, emotions. But the ones who do know, they will not define the success of management that has happened in the last 100 years. Ask them this question. Okay, if we can't delist wolves now, at what population do wolves need to get to where you say, okay, management is appropriate now? The answer will always be never. Always. One of our commissioners here in California asked Wendy Kiefover, who's with the Humane Society, she said, if you knew, if we could show you there was 50,000 bears in California, because your whole argument, Wendy, was we only have 10 to 12,000 bears in California. We have to stop hunting. Climate change and all the fires and everything else, the bears are going to be wiped out. The head biologist at the time, nobody knew this was happening, came up and said, hey, we've been doing a 5-year bear study. We're not done yet, but I think it's important everyone knows that it looks like we have 60 to 80,000 bears in California. So their entire argument was based on, we don't have any bears. We got to stop hunting. When he came forward and said, this looks like what the study's going to be, the commissioner said, Wendy, is this an issue where you are just against hunting because it's not sustainable anymore? Or if there are 50,000 bears, would you be then in support of hunting because we need to do something to manage this population? And Wendy said, there's never a number that we will get to where I will support hunting bears. So there is a game we have to play, and I think it's, and I don't know if game is the right word. There's a strategy that we have to play, I think, to win this argument, and I think that's what I just explained there. If that makes any sense, that's why I think being a little more definitive and explanatory in our words is so important, because once we start doing that, the anti-hunting argument breaks down, because they don't like words. They don't like real meanings. They just don't. They call everything slaughter. They call everything murder. It's like, well, what does that mean? What do you mean? So I look at if I'm in a room with an anti-hunter and we're debating, I want to use those words because I think the reasonable audience is always going to side with me, because the anti-hunters will always end up being unreasonable if you talk to them for more than 10 minutes. So that's why words matter.
James?
What's definitive about manage?
So the definitive about manage is is what management actually means under the system of, quotas and population surveys, reporting. I mean, all of those things fall under management.
But do you think that somebody who's not in either camp, they're not an anti-hunter, they're not a hunter, do you think they see we need to manage wolves and they understand that all of those things fall under the word manage?
Let me answer your question again. You said, what is definitive about management? It's the separation between, so if we are going to manage wolves or manage elk or whatever else, that means that means there's a defined number. So as opposed to go out and kill all of the wolves, go out and kill all of the mountain lions, go out and kill all of the bears, management means we have an estimated population guess. Here's what we want to take out of the population. That's management.
So
kill would be no reporting, no harvest, no quotas. Like that could fall under kill. Like let's just go out and kill them all. That's why I think it's important to the non-hunter to understand the differences.
So in your brain, Charles, you're saying that using manage, harvest provides a definitiveness to that there is a regulatory mechanism behind the action under which we're undertaking. And if you had used the word kill, that has a connotation of being very loose, potentially illegal, without limits.
I'm not setting up the argument. I'm not setting up the debate. I'm not setting up the conversation with the anti-hunters or the non-hunting public if I use the word kill right off the bat. I would like to use management and then maybe have somebody question management so then I can have a chance to explain what that actually means. You know what I mean?
It's an invitation for question because I could make the argument that manage means throw out some GPS collars and monitor them, which changes nothing. Monitoring is not a needle mover. It's a mandatory precursor for a lot of wildlife biology today. To be more definitive about it, you might say we need to hunt and trap wolves in order to control and occasionally reduce their population. Like that. Those are words that I feel like everybody could look at and they would know what it meant.
Yeah.
Well, let me push back a little bit, James. You didn't use kill.
Please do. Yeah.
You used hunt and trap. You didn't use the word kill.
Right, because they're going to be wildly unsuccessful. They're not going to friggin' kill anything because it's wolves and it's super duper hard. So what's going to happen is we're going to buy a bunch of tags and licenses and go dumb around in the woods and get really cold and be like, this sucks, I'm going home. I wonder who's freaking playing football this Sunday.
Yeah.
We could go full Wyoming on wolves and be like, hey, have at it, boys. And it would have next to zero effect on the population across every Western state. I guarantee it's too hard.
Let's go back to the original intent of this whole discussion. We're not really in this discussion of words and this discussion of what we use and the terms we use. It's not really pertinent to the population. It's pertinent to the people that are listening to us.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask this, and that's why I said you didn't use kill right then. All you did was you just said the same thing. We hunt and trap wolves
in order to control and reduce the population.
In order to manage, like Charles was saying.
Maybe.
I also think, let me tell you, so, there's like a hunt to eat gets thrown around, but more importantly, only kill what you eat. And I've heard that a lot. This is also why I like to use harvest or management, because they both have purpose. It doesn't always mean that you are using it for food or that you're killing that animal for food. It doesn't always mean that. There's purpose. Wolves, right? Probably grizzly bears. Although I would eat some grizzly bears for sure. But I'm not going to eat everything. I'm not going to eat all predator. I'm never going to eat a coyote. Few people do. I'm never going to.
Gross.
But is there a purpose for it? That's also so, because that can put yourself in a corner, right? Only kill what you eat. That can back yourself into a corner really quick. When it comes to
it's ridiculous. I think it's very selfish as well. Interestingly, and this is a complete aside, but I hang out with a lot of former snipers. They're my buddies, and about half of them will not hunt predators. And I find that so interesting, and I don't really understand it. And I have great conversations with them about it. I feel like if I'm going out and hunting prey species like deer, elk, bunnies, you name it, then I have an obligation to hunt predators as well, so that we can work back towards some stasis in that ecosystem. I can't only be an extractor of the prey base if I'm leaving another extractor in there. So this morning I'm up in the dark and I'm hunting predators, and I killed a coyote. I did not harvest a coyote for sure. I didn't even walk out there. But I have an obligation in my thought process to hunt predators if I'm also going to hunt their prey species. Always understanding that balance is a verb. It is something that we're striving towards and we can never achieve. We pull the levers that we can and we're never going to get there. And nature is not a terrarium where we can get everything perfect and static, because that just doesn't exist. I think that is also a massive understanding. And in the conversations I have with non-hunters, it's the word that comes up every single time is balance in nature. I don't know what people are imagining in their mind when they think that that's possible.
Well, they're imagining what you just went through this morning. That's what I believe. I believe that this morning, and all your thought processes is running through a management lens.
But they're offset, right? So that
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's still management.
Well, it's still management, but it's not balance.
Okay,
it's not.
Let me ask this. You mean like 50-50? Are you saying, do you think that's what people are when they say balance, like 50-50, or what's define that if you can, because I don't even know if I could.
I believe that most non-hunters, when they talk about balance in nature, are imagining a world without people, or areas without people, where cats and dogs get along and hot dogs are free at Costco and everything is perfect. And everything, all these populations are perfectly maintained, and any illness or disease is immediately canceled out, and it's just this perfect what's the word, utopia of wildlife, flora and fauna. I really believe that most people think that can exist, and that it could exist in an isolated wilderness area that's surrounded by agriculture and urbanization. It cannot. It is truly impossible. And those are some of the longer conversations that I end up having, is teasing that out and breaking it down and getting somebody to a place where they actually are imagining the reality of this and understand that it's constant flux, and that as humans, we are capable of affecting these populations negatively or positively, and that we're always going to be managing for an objective, and that we're going to do what we can in order to achieve it. There's this French notion called noblesse oblige, and it comes from the Cavalier days, where nobility still fought in battles. And it basically means nobility obligates. And this is still taught in military leadership today. However, what I take that to mean is, if you're capable of doing something, you are obligated to do it. And that's what I believe our role is as humans, but it is on hunters and biologists to actually do the thing, because nobody else is going to.
Mm. James, let me ask this question. This is going to be a very provocative question.
Ooh.
And I have been accused of this. Charles has probably been accused of it. Do you believe that if somebody uses harvest instead of kill, are they apologizing for being a hunter? Are they, dare I step into the whole being a snowflake kind of world? Is that what these people are? Is that what's happening?
I think generally speaking, and this isn't what Charles is doing, but generally speaking, when people use the word harvest, they're afraid to talk about who they are and what they do.
You don't think that they're thinking about the audience? Go ahead, Charles. Sorry.
I don't want to stop. I understand both sides of this, so I don't want to stop putting up pictures and of deer that I kill or whatever, elk, things like that. So what James was talking about earlier, kind of the push to stop that because it's hurting us. I get the argument that it's hurting us because we have no response to it. We have no PR. We have no advertising. We have nothing that is framed for the non-hunting public on why hunting is a good thing at all. So all people see is just a bunch of dead stuff, and then it gets labeled as this is trophy hunting, and some of those people just go, oh my God, they're just doing it for the head and whatever, blah, 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 blah. They don't see any purpose or anything like that. I think that it is possible to, I like to kind of put it in people's faces, but I also then like to have a good answer for it, right? So I'm not afraid to show a kill or blood or breaking down a deer, but I want to give a real good reason for it. And those real good reasons can be, I have an awesome story. When you sit down with people and have dinner, actually face to face, things change, right? You have a conversation with somebody, and all of a sudden, you're not the monster they might have thought you were 5 minutes ago, because we probably have a lot more in common than we don't. Most people still eat meat. I mean, this whole thing, sometimes I lose my mind. I'm like, hold on, like 89% of the world's eating meat, and you're freaking out because I went and got meat out of the woods? Maybe you didn't know I went and actually used it for meat. Is that what it is? Like, I don't know. It's always different for each person, I think. And
there's also this thought that a lot of people have that if we weren't hunting those animals, that they wouldn't die.
To some extent, it seems like that. I mean, it's like, is that true? I mean,
well, they're smart people. They just haven't run the experiment out in their minds. And
I think it's up to us to have that conversation. Like, if we engage, the better we're going to do. And then, if they see, a dead deer or a bear or something like that, they might not have the reaction to it because they understand the process and they understand, some aspects to what that means. I think that's important for sure.
And they also imagine most of these animals dying either old, sick, or weak, right? That rhetoric has been pushed onto people forever, and they think that's how predation occurs.
Yeah.
And we're learning that that's not true. It's not true. That the data does not support that. So if we're imagining young, healthy animals getting killed by predators killing each other, infanticide among cougars and bears, cannibalism, things like this, like that starts to hit a little bit differently, because ultimately a lot of people are anthropomorphizing these animals, and in that convolutes the entire situation.
Yeah.
I know you guys both know this. At the end of the day, probably the biggest issue we face, at least from what I can tell, the biggest conflict people have, I think what runs around in people's brains and their minds is why should humans be involved in wildlife management? Who are we? Who are we to say this is what should be done? Who are we to want to manage, want to kill, whatever it is? Who are we to do that? And I think that goes back to rewilding. That's the debate there. And it's up to us to really explain that. And I know I know this is like what Robbie does pretty much all the time. But when he brought up rewilding, the thing I thought about was just, sure, yeah, let's rewild. But it's not rewind. It's impossible.
No, that's a really good point.
The
It's
maps.
not rewind.
No, but that's what I think people are thinking.
Oh, no, for sure. Everyone wants to go back to the 1700s, right? That's where wildlife needs to be today.
Yeah.
is the
How many people
1700s.
lived in California? Let's just use 1700s. I don't know. Somebody Google it. But whatever. Let's say it was 100,000 people. Okay.
Probably still a shit ton of
1700s. It
people.
totally wasn't even that. Anyway. And grizzly bears were here, right? And grizzly bears, they're a keystone species and they're apex predators, blah, 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 blah. There's a movement here right now in California, and it's gaining ground to bring grizzly bears back. And it falls under rewilding, right? There are 40 million people that live in California. Is this good for the grizzly bears? If grizzly bears could have a preference, would they rather live in BFE, where most of them live, or would they rather come to California where they are going to be subject to conflict every single day of their lives? Now, yes, I'm humanizing grizzly bears, but what I'm getting at is, who are we doing this for? Who is benefiting? To whose benefit? Is it actually for the wildlife's benefit, or is it for our warm and fuzzy feeling that, there's a grizzly bear 60 miles away, or 100 miles, or 200 miles away, and that makes me feel good now?
Yeah. James and I are going to put forward a paper. We found this archaeological dig in San Francisco that shows the natural occurrence of grizzly bears in San Francisco, and build a petition for grizzly bears being put back into San Francisco.
This was one of my favorite habitats.
Exactly.
Right here.
All right, I've got this last question, sort of wrap-up thing, okay? Because I expressed this to Charles, and Charles had actually a differing opinion than I do on this matter. Charles is like, what did I say?
Charles is so nervous right now.
I remember.
Do we think that this issue, this debate, this whole thing, kill versus harvest, the title of this podcast, do we think that this is actually something that the non-hunting general public actually cares about? Or is it more of an internal, inside the hunting community clash of viewpoints, clash of, apologetics, if you want to use that term? James, what do you think?
I don't know, but I'm going to find out.
Okay. I don't know what that means. Maybe I should be scared. Maybe I shouldn't.
No, I'm just. I'll run a little Instagram poll. I'll ask the peoples, and we'll find out.
What do you think? Let's play a scientist. Give me a hypothesis.
I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters. I think that this is infighting, and that ultimately, I believe it's weakening ourselves from within, and that's one of the reasons that I've held on to the language that I use.
I am of your opinion. I think that this is a inside the hunting community apologetics faction kind of issue. I also agree with Charles that it's also people using it in the wrong context without the proper acknowledgement and defining of why they're using what they're using. But Charles, you said to me that you believed it was the opposite.
Well, I don't disagree that it's not infighting. I mean, hunters, we just fight about everything. But I do. Your question was, do I think it's important? Do I think non-hunters care?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they have to be engaged. They don't care about hunting. When they don't wake up caring about hunting. We have to make them care about hunting. And I think there are specific words that'll lead to a broader conversation with them that we can use with them to get their attention. That will lead to them caring about hunting in a positive way. I truly do. From the people that I talk to, that's my proof. And I'm surprised. I'm like, I'm having a hard time finding people who end up hating hunting at the end of the conversation. I really am. Because it's just it's a human conversation. Now, again, this isn't over social media. We're not arguing on Twitter. This is humans being humans. We've lost
rewinding what society should be.
Yeah. And when you have those conversations, see, I can talk about harvest, but then I can also then that gives me a chance to tell them about the kill. And what's crazy is they get really interested in, wait a second, how long were you out? They get interested in like how long you were in Idaho and what'd you have in your backpack? What'd you do about water? They start asking all these questions because they're like, What is going on? And then you got this bear. I love to talk about hunting bears because I know it's a trigger for them, or people just get they get a little antsy or uncomfortable about it. But then when I talk about the adventure and then breaking it down, and then I feed them bear, I don't know. It's just for me. I think they care when we give them a reason to care. We have to give them a reason to care, or I think about ballot initiatives a lot and things like that. That's why I want to do this. I want to make the anti-hunting argument irrelevant, and I really think we can do that. We can outsmart them, we can out-strategize them, and we can play their game.
Well said. Well said. James, last words? Final words? Final thoughts?
I just appreciate being here with two guys who are as thoughtful as you two. Sincerely. I know I don't compliment either of you ever, really, but I know that you work really hard at this stuff. You spend a lot of time thinking about it. You're both really intelligent people. I've genuinely enjoyed this last hour of conversation. Thank you both.
You are welcome. Thank you for the discussion opportunities and the ability to think through your answers, put out your viewpoints without worry of recourse.
I just wanted to feel heard.
That's right. That's why we put you on here, James. Otherwise, we would never have invited you.
I just wanted this space. So thank you for holding space for me so that I could feel heard.
Listen, I think we should do this again. I think if something else comes up in the future that is a little bit of a thorny topic, thorny subject, just throw it to the three guys.
I'm here for it.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah. This is good. Thanks, guys.
All right, gentlemen. Till the next time.